If you think a can opener was the most important piece of equipment in Vietnam, you're dead wrong. Because when you're stuck in triple canopy jungle with nothing but rice and whatever you can catch, that little can of C-rations becomes worth more than gold. And what soldiers did to make food edible out there, that's a story nobody talks about. The Vietnam War wasn't just fought with bullets and bombs. It was fought with empty stomachs, soaking wet rations, and the constant question of what the hell you were going to eat next. See, combat is exhausting. Humping through the jungle with 60 pounds of gear in 100-degree heat burns through calories like crazy. And if you can't eat, you can't fight. So soldiers had to get creative, really creative. Today, we're diving into something most documentaries skip over: the food. How American soldiers cooked in the jungle, what they ate, how they survived when supply lines got cut, and the wild tricks they used to turn garbage rations into something that wouldn't make them want to quit right there in the mud. Here's the thing about fighting in Vietnam that nobody prepared these guys for. Back in World War II, you had bases, you had mess halls, you had somewhat regular meals. But in Vietnam, you were out in the bush for weeks at a time. No kitchens, no refrigeration, just you, your pack, and whatever food you could carry. And that food was mostly C-rations. Now, if you don't know what C-rations are, imagine the worst cafeteria food you've ever had, then can it, let it sit in a warehouse for 5 years, and ship it to a jungle where it gets cooked by the sun every single day. Yeah, not great. Each C-ration meal came in a box about the size of a large book. Inside, you'd find a can of some main course, which could be anything from ham and lima beans, which soldiers called ham and motherfuckers because everyone hated them, to beef slices, spaghetti, or turkey loaf. You'd also get a canned fruit, some crackers or bread, cheese spread, peanut butter, cocoa powder, coffee, sugar, salt, cigarettes, matches, toilet paper, and a tiny little can opener called a P-38. Sounds okay, right? Wrong. These rations were designed for Korean War weather, cold climates, not tropical humidity where everything rusts and spoils. The cans would swell up from the heat, the crackers turned to mush, the cheese spread melted into liquid, and that main course? It was already questionable when it was made, and it only got worse sitting in the Vietnamese sun. But soldiers couldn't just not eat. They were burning between 4,000 and 6,000 calories a day, marching, digging, fighting, sweating through their uniforms. They needed fuel. So they had to figure out how to make this stuff edible. And they had to do it without giving away their position to the enemy. So how did they do it? How did soldiers turn these horrible rations into actual meals? First, let's talk about the P-38 can opener. This little piece of metal was only about 1.5 inches long. It had a small blade that you'd hook onto the rim of a can, then walk it around the edge to cut it open. Soldiers wore them on their dog tag chains because losing your P-38 meant you couldn't eat. Some guys had 2 or 3 as backups. You could open a can in under 30 seconds if you knew what you were doing, and every soldier knew what they were doing after about a week in country. But opening the can was just step 1. Step 2 was making it hot, because cold ham and lima beans straight from the can is about as appetizing as it sounds. And this is where things get interesting. The official way to heat rations was with heat tablets. These little white tablets came in the ration pack, and you'd break off a piece, light it, and set your can on top. They burned clean, didn't make much smoke, and worked pretty well. But there were 2 problems. 1, you never had enough of them. And 2, even a small flame at night could give away your position. So, soldiers improvised. They invented something called a hobo stove. You'd take an empty C-ration can, cut ventilation holes near the bottom with your P-38, cut a bigger hole near the top for feeding fuel, and boom, you had a stove. For fuel, you'd use C4 plastic explosive. Yeah, you read that right. C4. The same stuff they used to blow up bunkers and bridges. Turns out, C4 burns really well. It doesn't explode unless it's detonated properly. So you could pinch off a piece about the size of a golf ball, light it, and it would burn hot and steady for several minutes. Hot enough to boil water or warm up your food. Some guys would even cook with it during the day when smoke didn't matter as much. The brass technically didn't want soldiers burning C4 because inhaling the fumes could make you sick. But what were they gonna do? Court-martial half the infantry? Everyone did it. It was either that or eat cold food for months. Now, if you were really lucky, you might find some dry wood that would burn. But in the jungle, everything is wet, always. So finding dry wood was nearly impossible unless you were near a village or in a cleared area. Another trick was to use plastic from ration packaging. Soldiers would ball up the plastic wrappers, light them, and use them for quick heat. It created black smoke and smelled terrible, but it worked at a pinch. But heating the food was only half the battle. The other half was making it taste like something other than cardboard and sadness. This is where soldier creativity really shined. Guys would trade rations like they were baseball cards. If you got stuck with ham and lima beans, you'd trade literally anything to get rid of them. Spaghetti and meatballs? That was currency. Beef slices? Even better. Some guys would gamble their cigarettes to get certain meals. But trading only got you so far. To really improve the food, you needed to combine things, mix things, add things. One of the most popular creations was called gunfighter stew, or ranger pudding, depending on who you asked. Basically, you'd take whatever cans you had, dump them all into one pot or canteen cup, heat it up, and add whatever you could find. Crackers to thicken it, cheese spread for flavor, hot sauce if you had any. Some guys would crumble up pound cake and mix it with cocoa powder and water to make something like chocolate pudding. The key was hot sauce, Tabasco sauce. If you were smart, you'd ride home and ask your family to send bottles of it. It could make literally anything taste better. There were soldiers who put Tabasco on everything, and I mean everything. Fruit cocktail, peanut butter, coffee, it didn't matter. If it made the food less boring, it was worth it. Speaking of coffee, that was another crucial element. The instant coffee in C-rations tasted like dirt mixed with more dirt. But soldiers needed caffeine to stay alert, especially on night patrol. So they'd mix the coffee with cocoa powder and sugar to make it drinkable. Some guys would use so much sugar that it was basically hot chocolate with a hint of coffee flavor. Now here's where things get really interesting. Sometimes soldiers didn't just eat C-rations, they supplemented them with local food. In villages, if the locals were friendly, soldiers could trade cigarettes, candy, or other ration items for fresh fruit, rice, or even hot meals. Vietnamese food was actually really good compared to what they were eating. Fresh vegetables, real meat, actual flavor. Some soldiers got hooked on Vietnamese cuisine and would seek it out whenever possible. But when you couldn't trade for food, some guys would hunt or forage. And I'm not talking about shooting deer. I'm talking about whatever protein you could find in the jungle. Some soldiers caught fish using grenades. Yeah, really. You'd toss a grenade into a river or stream. The explosion would stun the fish, and they'd float to the surface. Instant fish. It was technically illegal, but again, who's gonna stop you when you're 20 miles from the nearest officer? Others set snares for small game, monkeys, birds, whatever they could catch. Some guys even ate snakes when they came across them. python, bamboo viper, cobra. If it wasn't poisonous to eat, it was fair game. They'd skin it, gut it, cook it over C4, and boom, fresh meat. The more adventurous soldiers learned from Vietnamese scouts and indigenous Montagnard allies. These local fighters knew the jungle inside and out. They knew which plants were edible, which bugs you could eat, where to find the best food sources. Some American soldiers picked up this knowledge and used it to supplement their diets. But here's the catch. Not everyone did this. A lot of soldiers stuck to their C-rations because they were scared of getting sick from local food or water. Dysentery was a real problem. Parasites were everywhere. Water could be contaminated. So most guys played it safe and stuck with what came out of a can. Water purification was its own challenge. You couldn't just drink from streams because the water could make you violently ill. So soldiers carried iodine tablets. You'd fill your canteen, drop in a tablet, wait 30 minutes, and then it was safe to drink. The water tasted like chemicals and metal, but it wouldn't kill you. Some guys would mix powdered drink packets with their water to mask the taste. Kool-Aid, Tang, anything to make it less awful. Tang was especially popular because NASA used it for astronauts, so soldiers thought it was cool. Plus, it covered up the iodine flavor pretty well. But here's the moment that really defined the food experience in Vietnam. The moment that separated the soldiers who just survived from the ones who actually maintained some kind of sanity out there. It was the ability to make something feel like home, even for just 5 minutes. Picture this. You've been in the field for 3 weeks. You're wet, you're tired, you've lost weight, you're eating the same garbage every single day. And then one day, mail call comes. And in that package from home is a care package with real food, cookies, beef jerky, summer sausage, canned cheese, crackers that aren't stale military issue, and hot sauce. Lots of hot sauce. That night, you and your buddies pool together all your best rations. Someone's got spaghetti, someone saved their pound cake. You've got the hot sauce from home. Somebody else has cheese spread and crackers. And you make a feast. You heat everything up. You mix it all together. You actually sit down if the situation allows, and you eat a meal that tastes like something. For those few minutes, you're not in a jungle halfway around the world. You're not wondering if tomorrow you'll step on a mine or walk into an ambush. You're just a guy eating food with his friends, laughing about stupid stuff, complaining about officers, being human. That's what food meant in Vietnam. It wasn't just fuel, it was connection, it was morale. It was the difference between being a machine that marches and shoots and being a person who remembers why they're fighting to get home. The soldiers who figured out how to make decent food, who learned the tricks, who shared what they had, who made cooking a ritual instead of a chore, those were often the guys who held it together mentally. Because having control over something, even something as small as what you ate, made all the difference when everything else was chaos. So yeah, cooking in Vietnam wasn't like cooking anywhere else. It was survival. It was creativity under pressure. It was taking the absolute worst ingredients and making something that wouldn't break your spirit. American soldiers in Vietnam ate food that would make most people quit. They heated it with explosives. They mixed things that should never be mixed. They ate creatures that most Americans wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And they did it all while carrying their entire kitchen on their backs through some of the most hostile terrain on Earth. But they figured it out. They adapted. They survived. And in the process, they created a whole culture around food that only they understood. A culture of P-38 can openers worn like jewelry, of Tabasco sauce worth its weight in gold, of trading ham and lima beans like they were cursed objects, of ranger pudding and gunfighter stew, and whatever else you called the concoction you invented to stay sane. The next time you see a veteran from Vietnam, remember that they didn't just fight a war. They lived it every single day. And part of living it was figuring out how to eat, how to take care of themselves when nobody else would, how to make the impossible work. That's what jungle chefs did. They kept themselves alive, they kept their friends alive, and they did it one terrible meal at a time.